Hello, my dear students. I hope you're all taking good care of yourselves by staying active even while staying indoors. Once again, this is English class with Ma'am Cleo. In this video, we will be reviewing the different lessons that we've discussed for this quarter, all of which were geared toward helping you create a most interesting product commercial. There's no time to waste, so let's dive into our review. During our first quarter, we focused on African literature, specifically the different distinguishing features of African folktales. We also established the fact that literature is greatly influenced by the cultures and traditions of its country of origin. That's why it is just as important to study the country as it foreshadows the kind of stories we will encounter and allow us to comprehend the pieces better. Now, for our second quarter, we have shifted from African to Chinese literature, and this time, let us put emphasis on the subject which plays an essential role in the lives of East Asians, and naturally, their literature, nature. Throughout this review, I want you to keep in mind the essential question, why is nature an important part of our lives? As for Chinese poetry, mountains are often the subject of interest because it is where hermits seek refuge in their search for immortality, purification, and renewal. Because during ancient times when dynasties ruled China, certain creatures such as dragons and snakes were regarded with extraordinary characteristics, and mountains were seen with an important energy of nature and caves as portals leading to other dominions. The Chinese also believed that nature goes through a continuous cycle of transformation, which is known as hua. Nature, for the Chinese, is not lifeless but consists of energy or vitality, spirit, and life. Now that was just a short introduction on the vital and complex role played by nature in East Asian literature. Before you start studying the piece, let's first review a lesson that will assist you in understanding the typical language used in literature, literal and figurative language. In the following text, take note of and consider whether the type of language used for the text is appropriate for its purpose. Listen carefully and read along. Former senator nabbed during drug bust. A life sentence was given to a former senator who has been proven to be involved in illegal logging and drug trade, the Tribune reports. The city where the former senator was nabbed is floating in an ocean of cocaine. The former senator's illegal activities were an open secret. However, his family cries a river of tears and claims the accusations are a foul play against an honest-to-goodness senator who only has a shirt on his back. To answer the question of whether or not the language used for the text is appropriate, you first need to take note of the kind of text that is presented before you. Based on the title and content of the text itself, we can glean that it is a small section of a news article. Having established that, we can now discern if the language used is appropriate. You need to understand that when it comes to news articles, it is unnecessary to use descriptive words and expressions that stretch the truth about their subjects in order to entertain their audience. The language used in news articles need to be direct and literal. Hence, the language used for this text is inappropriate. The excessive use of words in an unusual sense rather than in exact or expected ways is inappropriate for news articles. When we use language where the words mean exactly what they say, that is called literal language. In other occasions, when we want our words to create an image or suggest an idea, that is called figurative language. Here are the following figures of speech we will be discussing. First off, simile and metaphor, as these two are probably the most familiar to you. Let's discuss the two together as they are quite similar in the sense that both make comparisons between two things. Simile is commonly defined as a figure of speech in which a comparison is made using the words like or as, whereas metaphor is a figure of speech in which a comparison is made without using the words like or as. For example, Lola's glare scorches like the sun. Lola's praise is a gift. The first sentence is an example of simile in that Lola's glare is being compared to the scorching heat of the sun, and the second sentence, there being a direct comparison of Lola's praise to a gift, is a metaphor. Next up, personification. Personification is when a description in which human qualities are given to something that is not human. For example, the breeze carried with it the scent of wildflowers. Alma's harsh words hung in the air. Another familiar figure of speech is hyperbole, which is the use of exaggeration in speaking or writing and is not meant to be taken seriously. For example, I felt the flurrying of 1,000 butterflies in my stomach when I heard the news. This diamond-encrusted watch cost me an arm and a leg. Next, we have litotes. Litotes is a figure of speech which negates a positive in order to convey understatement. The classical example of litotes is the term not bad. As you can see, both of these words are negative, but when placed together, form a positive sentence. In most contexts, the use of litotes is used to understate a thing or situation. For example, it wasn't a complete disaster. At least you were not unpleasant to work with. Next up, metonymy and synecdoche. Once again, let's discuss them together as they share some similarities. Metonymy is the substitution of a word or group of words for an object or an idea. It's when you use one thing in place of something closely related to it, whereas synecdoche is a substitution of a part of an object to represent the whole. For example, next week, my boyfriend and I are headed to the altar. There are many hired hands in the new factory. In the first sentence, altar represents getting married, and in the second sentence, hands is substituted for people who are working in the new factory. Let's move to onomatopoeia. Rather than a figure of speech, onomatopoeia is what we call a sound device. It is the formation of words and images in imitation of actual sound. For example, the screeching of electricity startled me. I turned around to check how much milk to add when poof, a sudden breeze blew the cart away. Apostrophe is a figure of speech wherein the character or persona speaks to an object or item that is not alive as if it were in fact alive. For example, Julia smiled at the report she held in her hands. You're going to blow them away. Oh, wild west wind. Euphemism is the replacement of a phrase which might be deemed offensive by one which implies the same meaning but does not carry the offense with it. Last year was a tough one. First, my 12-year-old dog was put down and my gran passed away. Paradox is a statement which contradicts itself and leaves you with something to think about. I always tell the truth, even when I lie. Whatever you do in life will be insignificant, but it is very important that you do it. Lastly, an oxymoron is when two words in a phrase contradict one another. Dan's horrible performance will be old news by the end of the week. The bitter civil war set brother against brother. The phrases old news and civil war contradict each other. Put what we have reviewed to good use and take a look at the poem Reading the Book of Hills and Seas by Tao Tien, translated by Arthur Waley. Take in the piece and allow our discussion on literal or figurative language assist you in understanding the poem. Many a times you will be asked to prepare write-ups, not only essays in English class but also reports in science or social studies. And this next lesson will serve as your foundation. It will allow you to effectively deliver the message or information being asked of you. So, let us carefully develop the way you present ideas or information and how you establish the relationship between them with the use of signal words and knowledge on the different organizational patterns. Now, whether you're aware of it or not, you use patterns of development to express yourself. When you point out the similarities and differences between two things, you are using comparison and contrast. When you give several reasons regarding your tardiness, you are using cause and effect. The use of signal words or expressions can reveal a particular pattern of development and show the relationship between or among ideas. As I've earlier stated, this lesson will serve as your foundation and help you improve your writing. Let's discover exactly how, starting with a general to particular organizational pattern. Pay close attention as the general to specific pattern is the basic pattern of presenting information in an expository text. In general to particular, You present a general idea and support it with the use of particular or specific examples. Take a look at the following passage. According to Marxists, histories are born out of class struggles. Inequality between the capitalists and the working classes give rise to conflicts that result to historical events. Take, for example, the French Revolution or our very own People Power Revolution. In both cases, the working class revolted against the powers that be, causing a disturbance in the status quo. Currently, labor unrest in various parts of the globe is very high, particularly in China. We often hear that history repeats itself. As long as there are oppressors and oppressed, as long as there is inequality between classes, history will keep being written. Here, the general idea being posited is histories are born out of class struggles or inequality. The writer proceeds to cite specific evidences, namely revolutions that stemmed from social unrest as well as current events, to support his idea. Having these concrete evidences allow the readers to perceive the objectivity of the information being presented, and by that, I mean they are far more convinced because the writer was able to justify the idea he or she was asserting. This is the gist of how general to particular is used to organize ideas. You are essentially giving examples that serve as evidence to back up an idea, claim, or fact that you are presenting. I've mentioned that this is the basic organizational pattern because all other patterns basically follow the same formula. It will only vary in terms of the signal words or expressions used depending on the type of text or the purpose of the writer. If general to specific is used to illustrate specific examples of a general idea, claim, and counterclaim, aims to change the way readers think or behave, as it is often used in argumentative or persuasive texts. A claim is a statement that presents an arguable position. It reflects your belief or opinion, and one responds to a claim by denying it with corresponding reasons or evidences. A counterclaim is the strongest argument against your claim. For example, Christmas celebration has even spread to non-Christian lands. In Japan, most families now celebrate Christmas, not because of its religious meaning, but purely as a merry-making occasion. According to Wall Street Journal, Santa Claus's cheery red face is plastered in shop windows in major cities of China. Yes, the Christmas fever is capturing China's newly rising urban middle class as an excuse to shop, eat, and party. The claim being made in this short passage is that Christmas, or rather the celebration of Christmas, has spread to even non-Christian lands. And the reasons or evidences that support that claim is the citing of Japan and China, which are non-Christian lands, and how they have come to start celebrating Christmas. Now, when it comes to the problem-solution organizational pattern, it is best discussed along with cause and effect, because in this particular pattern, it is inherent for you to establish that certain acts or phenomenon bring about a certain negative result that you perceive to be a problem. Likewise, when you start to discuss the solution to that perceived problem, you are emphasizing on the effect that certain acts will bring about. A comparison and contrast pattern arranges information according to how two or more things are similar to or different from one another. This is an effective pattern to use when the reader can better understand one subject when it is described in relation to another. If the reader is familiar with one topic, the writer can compare and contrast it with another topic to shed insight on it. With that, we have come to the end of this review. Don't forget to check your Schoology accounts for activities about these lessons. Once again, this has been English Class with Ma'am Clea.